The meditation chamber hummed softly around Commander as he tried to push away the nightmares that had plagued him for 15 cycles. His forearms trembled slightly as he adjusted the neural dampeners attached to his elongated skull. The scars across his chitinous exoskeleton told stories he wished he could forget, but the young cadets needed to hear them. They needed to understand what they might face. "Commander," came a gentle voice through the chamber's comm system, "the Academy Board is ready for your testimony." His mandibles clicked nervously. He had avoided this for so long, but the Galactic Federation needed to know. They needed to understand why he woke up screaming every night, why his species had lost an entire fleet to beings that should have been primitive savages. The hearing room was massive, designed to accommodate representatives from 43 different species. 6 legs carried him slowly to the central platform, where a neural recording device waited. Every word, every emotion, every terror-filled memory would be preserved for the military archives. "State your identification for the record," requested Admiral N, a towering crystalline being whose voice resonated like wind chimes. "Commander of the Al-Dominion, former tactical officer aboard the dreadnought Stellar Fang, veteran of the Terra campaign." His voice carried the weight of trauma that no amount of therapy could heal. "You were part of the initial assessment fleet, sent to evaluate the human, correct?" His compound eyes dilated at the mention of that cursed world. "Yes, Admiral. We thought it would be routine. Intelligence reports suggested a species barely past nuclear development. Their largest vessels were crude metal constructs that burned chemical fuel. We expected easy conquest." A murmur rippled through the assembled representatives. Many had heard rumors about the Terra campaign, but few knew the details. The Galactic Federation had classified most information about humanity after the disastrous first contact. "Tell us about your first encounter," Admiral N prompted. His breathing apparatus wheezed as old fears surfaced. "We dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their solar system, confident in our superior technology. Our fleet consisted of 12 dreadnoughts, 47 destroyers, and over 200 support vessels. We had conquered 17 worlds with smaller forces." He paused, his neural activity spiking as the recording device captured every nuance of his terror. "The humans detected us immediately. Not just our ships, but our exact numbers, our weapon configurations, even our fleet formation. We learned later they had been monitoring hyperspace fluctuations for decades, waiting. They knew we were coming long before we arrived." A Aran representative, her tentacles writhing with curiosity, interjected. "But surely their primitive sensors couldn't penetrate our stealth technology." His laugh was bitter and hollow. "That's what we thought. Our stealth systems had been perfected over, tested against the most advanced scanner arrays in the galaxy. But humans approach problems differently. Instead of trying to see through our camouflage, they looked for the absence of what should be there. They mapped the gravitational distortions our ships created, tracked the neutrino emissions from our power cores, even detected the quantum wake signatures our FTL drives left behind." The chamber fell silent. Several representatives exchanged worried glances. "Continue, Commander," Admiral N urged. "We received their first transmission 3 hours after arrival. Perfect galactic standard, spoken by a female human who identified herself as Admiral Sarah of the Terran Defense Force. She welcomed us to their system and invited us to surrender immediately." Nervous laughter echoed through the chamber, but didn't share in it. "We thought it was a joke. Captain ordered a demonstration of our power, targeting one of their outer mining stations. Our plasma cannons could vaporize a small moon, and this station was barely the size of a city block." His exoskeleton began to darken, a sign of extreme distress in his species. The beam never reached its target. Somehow, impossibly, the humans redirected our own weapons. The plasma stream curved away from the mining station and struck empty space. We later learned they had deployed gravitational field generators throughout their system, turning space itself into a defensive network. The silence stretched unbearably. Representatives who had been taking casual notes were now hanging on every word. That's when Admiral made her second transmission. She thanked us for the demonstration and showed us real-time footage of our own fleet, not from external sensors, but from inside our ships. Somehow, human operatives had infiltrated every major vessel in our fleet while we were still in hyperspace. Several representatives gasped. Infiltrating a ship during FTL travel was considered impossible by every known physics model. How? Whispered the Aaron representative. We still don't know. Our security recordings showed nothing unusual. No breaches, no unauthorized life signs, no temporal anomalies. But there they were, humans in environmental suits, moving through our corridors like ghosts. They had been studying our technology, our defenses, our crew rotations. They knew our ships better than we did. Activated a holographic display showing the interior of a AL dreadnought. The image was taken from his personal memory banks, filtered through the neural recorder. Look at this footage from the Stellar Fangs engineering section. Can you see anything unusual? The assembled representatives studied the image carefully. Everything appeared normal. AL crew members going about their duties, massive engines humming with power, standard security protocols in effect. There, highlighted a small section near the primary power coupling. Do you see that shadow? A dark shape, barely visible against the engine housing, could be glimpsed for just a moment. That shadow moved. It shouldn't exist according to our lighting systems, but there it was. We counted at least 50 such anomalies throughout the ship. The humans had somehow mastered stealth technology that made them nearly invisible even to direct observation. Admiral N's crystalline form sparkled with agitation. Are you suggesting they developed personal cloaking devices superior to our own? Not cloaking, something far more terrifying. They didn't hide from our sensors. They became part of our ship's background. Their suits somehow mimicked the quantum signatures of our hull materials, making them appear as ship components rather than foreign objects. The implications sent a chill through the chamber. If humans could infiltrate any vessel undetected, no fleet in the galaxy was safe. What happened next, Commander? Admiral N's voice had lost its earlier confidence. Admiral gave us one final chance to surrender. Captain laughed and ordered the fleet to attack formation. He said no primitive species would dictate terms to the Galactic Federation. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. That's when they showed us what humans really are. The recording device captured every nuance of his mounting terror as he prepared to relive the nightmare that had broken him. The first thing we noticed was our communications going dark. Not jammed, that would have triggered alarms. Our systems simply stopped working. The humans had somehow rewritten our communication protocols while their operatives were aboard our ships. We were blind, deaf, and isolated. He paused, his breathing becoming labored. Then our weapons began firing on their own, not at the humans, but at each other. Our own plasma cannons and missile arrays turned against friendly vessels. The humans had gained complete control of our targeting systems. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Taking control of enemy weapons was a theoretical concept, but actually implementing it required intimate knowledge of alien technology. But that wasn't the worst part, continued, his voice breaking. The worst part was when we realized the humans weren't just using our weapons against us, they were improving them in real time. Admiral N leaned forward. Explain. Our plasma cannons had specific power outputs, carefully calibrated for maximum efficiency. Suddenly, they were firing at 300% normal capacity. Our missile warheads, designed with yields equivalent to small nuclear weapons, began detonating with the force of stellar implosions. The humans had somehow upgraded our own weapons using principles we didn't understand. A delegate, her gas form shimmering with disbelief, spoke up. That's impossible. Weapon modifications require complete system overhauls, new power couplings, upgraded targeting matrices. You can't just increase firepower arbitrarily. His compound eyes fixed on her. Tell that to the crew of the Void Striker. Their own enhanced weapons overloaded and vaporized the entire ship in a matter of seconds. 3,000 souls, gone because the humans made our guns too powerful for our own hulls to contain. The horror of it settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. 12 dreadnoughts became 12 funeral pyres, destroyed by their own weapons that had been perverted by human ingenuity. We never fired a single shot at Earth. We never even got close enough to see there with our own sensors. His exoskeleton had darkened to deep black, and his four arms shook uncontrollably. But the humans weren't done with us yet. As our ships burned and died, Admiral opened a final communication channel. She appeared on every functional screen in the fleet, smiling that terrifying human smile. The neural recorder captured the memory with perfect clarity. Admiral Sarah, a small human female with graying hair and kind eyes that held depths of calculation that made skin crawl. She thanked us for the educational experience and informed us that 17 human volunteers had sacrificed their lives to gather intelligence on Galactic Federation technology. 17 people had allowed themselves to be trapped aboard doomed ships just to learn how our weapons worked. Several representatives made sounds of distress. The idea of willingly sacrificing lives for tactical advantage was alien to most civilized species. Then she showed us something that still haunts my dreams, a holographic display of Earth's defensive perimeter, but not as we had seen it initially. This was the real defense network. Activated another memory fragment. The image showed space around Earth bristling with weapons platforms, shield generators, and structures that easy classification. Everything we had seen before was camouflage. Those primitive orbital stations were actually fortress platforms armed with weapons that made our dreadnought guns look like children's toys. Those chemical fuel rockets were actually transport vessels for deployment systems we couldn't even identify. The scale of the deception was breathtaking. An entire star system had been converted into a military installation while maintaining the appearance of a barely spacefaring civilization. "How long," Admiral N asked quietly, "how long had they been preparing?" According to Admiral, over 200 years, ever since they detected their first deep space surveillance probe from the Federation. They knew we existed, knew we would eventually come for them, and they spent 2 centuries preparing for our arrival. The implications were staggering. Humans had known about galactic civilization for centuries and had chosen to remain hidden while preparing for inevitable conflict. But the most terrifying thing, continued, his voice barely audible, was what Admiral told us next. She said the demonstration we had witnessed was just a small sample of human capabilities, that everything we had seen, the infiltration, the weapon modifications, the system-wide deception, was considered basic defensive preparation by their military. The chamber had gone completely silent. She informed us that 18 human ships had been shadowing our fleet since we left Al space, studying our movements, our procedures, our weaknesses. We had been under observation for the entire 3-month journey to their system, and we never knew they were there. Admiral N's crystalline structure was barely glowing now, dimmed by the horror of the revelation. 18 ships, Commander, are you certain? I saw the recordings, Admiral. Sensor logs from our own equipment showing human vessels maintaining position just outside our detection range, using propulsion systems that left no energy signatures. They had been watching us, learning from us, preparing for us for months. Strength was fatting, but he forced himself to continue. The galaxy needed to know. Admiral gave us one final gift before sending us home. She uploaded complete technical specifications for every system on our ships, along with detailed improvement recommendations. The humans had learned everything there was to know about AL military technology in the space of a few hours. The terror in his voice was absolute now. She said they were sharing this information as a gesture of goodwill to demonstrate that human intentions toward the galaxy were peaceful. But the message was clear. They could have destroyed us utterly, but chose mercy instead. The recording device captured every neural fluctuation, as relived the moment that had shattered his understanding of the universe. Of our original fleet of over 200 vessels, only 47 survived the journey home. The rest were too damaged by their own modified weapons to maintain structural integrity. 15,000 personnel lost, not to enemy fire, but to our own systems turned against us by human engineering. Admiral N finally spoke, his voice hollow. And the survivors, what was their condition? Broken, Admiral, all of us broken. We had encountered something that shouldn't exist, a species that could outthink, outplan, and out-engineer civilizations that had mastered space travel when their world was still cooling. The psychological trauma was, he paused, searching for words. Many of mine never recovered. Some took their own lives rather than face the memory of human intelligence. The chamber remained silent for long moments, processing the implications of what they had heard. Commander, Admiral N said slowly, do you believe the humans pose a threat to galactic civilization? His laugh was the sound of sanity crumbling. Admiral, I don't think you understand. The humans aren't a threat to galactic civilization. They are something far worse. They are the next step in galactic civilization, and the rest of us are already obsolete. The neural recorder continued to capture every detail as prepared to reveal the most terrifying truth of all, what the humans had shown him about the future of war among the stars. The neural recording device hummed as it processed the overwhelming flood of traumatic memories flowing from Commander's consciousness. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of worlds sat in stunned silence, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what they were hearing. "Commander," Admiral N's crystalline voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there before. "You mentioned that Admiral showed you something about the future of warfare. Please elaborate." His forearms wrapped around his torso in a defensive posture that his species adopted when facing mortal terror. His compound eyes dilated as he accessed memories he had tried desperately to suppress. After our fleet was neutralized, Admiral invited the surviving ship commanders to witness what she called a demonstration of human problem-solving methodology. We were transferred to a human facility orbiting their moon, a structure that our sensors had dismissed as a simple research station. The holographic display activated again, showing what appeared to be a modest orbital platform. But as manipulated the image, the true scope became apparent. What we thought was a research station was actually a construction facility larger than our biggest shipyards. The entire structure was hidden using some form of dimensional folding technology. From the outside, it appeared to be perhaps 50 meters in diameter. In reality, the interior spaces stretched for kilometers. Several representatives leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused intently on the display. The humans had invited us there to witness the testing of what they called adaptive warfare protocols. They wanted to show us how they approached military problems differently from every other known civilization. His breathing apparatus wheezed as stress hormones flooded his system. They brought us to an observation deck overlooking a vast testing chamber. Inside, they had constructed perfect replicas of military vessels from 12 different galactic civilizations, including several ships from species that weren't even members of the Federation. Admiral N's glow flickered. How did they obtain those designs? That's what we asked. Admiral explained that human intelligence operations had been active throughout the galaxy for over 50 years. They had infiltrated trade stations, diplomatic missions, even military academies. Every public celebration, every joint training exercise, every cultural exchange had been an opportunity for human operatives to gather data. The scope of human espionage was staggering. The Galactic Federation prided itself on security, yet humans had apparently been studying them for decades. But the replica ships weren't the demonstration. They were just the raw materials. What happened next? His voice broke as he struggled to continue. They released a single human soldier into the testing chamber. One person, armed with nothing but standard infantry equipment, against 12 different starships. Nervous laughter rippled through the chamber, but it died quickly as representatives saw the absolute terror in his eyes. The human soldier, Admiral introduced him as Sergeant Michael Torres, began by analyzing each vessel's design. He spent exactly 17 minutes walking around the ships, running some kind of handheld scanner over their hulls. Then he went to work. The holographic display shifted to show the testing chamber. A single human figure, impossibly small against the massive starships, moved with purpose and precision that seemed almost inhuman. First, he approached the Aaron cruiser, a ship design that had been classified as impregnable due to its regenerating biometal hull. Sergeant Torres pulled out a small device, no larger than my hand, and attached it to the ship's underside. The Aaron representative's tentacles writhed anxiously. What did the device do? "It began singing," replied, his voice hollow. "A specific frequency that resonated with the biometal's cellular structure. Within minutes, the entire hull began to decompose. The human had somehow determined the exact harmonic frequency needed to disrupt the ship's living armor." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Aaron bioships were considered among the most advanced vessels in the galaxy, their living hulls capable of healing any damage almost instantly. But that was just the beginning. Next, he moved to the cloudship, a vessel that exists partially in normal space and partially in a dimensional fold, making it virtually untouchable. The delegate's gas form shifted nervously. Sergeant Torres produced another device, this one projecting some kind of field that forced the ship's dimensional anchoring points to destabilize. The entire vessel materialized fully in normal space, becoming vulnerable to conventional attack. His exoskeleton continued to darken as he relived the systematic destruction of everything the galaxy considered militarily impossible to defeat. In less than 2 hours, that single human soldier had neutralized all 12 ships using methods we had never conceived of. Each approach was specifically tailored to exploit weaknesses that our own engineers insisted didn't exist. Admiral N's voice was barely audible. How is such tactical innovation possible? Admiral explained it to us afterward. She said humans approach warfare as an intellectual puzzle rather than a demonstration of superior technology. While we focus on building better weapons and stronger armor, humans focus on understanding how things work and finding ways to make them stop working. Activated another memory fragment showing Admiral's briefing room. The human leader stood before a complex diagram that hurt to look at directly. She showed us this chart, a mathematical model of what they call systemic vulnerability analysis. Every ship, every weapon, every defense system has inherent weaknesses built into its fundamental design. These weaknesses exist because of the physical laws that govern their operation. The diagram pulsed with interconnected lines and nodes, representing relationships between different technological systems. According to human military doctrine, superior firepower is irrelevant if you can identify and exploit systemic vulnerabilities. They don't try to punch through our shields. They find ways to make our shields work against us. The implications were terrifying. Human warfare wasn't about overwhelming force, but about turning an enemy's strengths into weaknesses. Admiral told us that every human soldier receives training in what they call asymmetric problem solving. They're taught to analyze any system, technological, biological, or social, and identify potential failure points that can be exploited. Several representatives exchanged worried glances. The idea of every human being trained as a systematic threat analyst was disturbing. But the most frightening part of the demonstration was still to come. Admiral asked us to suggest modifications to the test ships that would address the vulnerabilities Sergeant Torres had exploited. His compound eyes reflected the horror of that memory. We spent 6 hours working with our best tactical minds to redesign those ships. We added new armor types, modified shield generators, installed backup systems for every critical component. When we were finished, we were confident that we had created vessels that could withstand the humans' attack methods. Admiral N leaned forward despite himself. And did they? Admiral brought in a different human soldier, Corporal Lisa, and repeated the exercise. She analyzed our modifications for exactly 12 minutes, then proceeded to neutralize all 12 ships using completely different methods. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Corporal didn't even use the same types of devices as Sergeant Torres. Where he had used sonic disruptors, she used molecular acid. Where he had used dimensional, she used gravitational field generators. Every approach was unique, innovative, and devastatingly effective. His voice dropped to a whisper. When we asked how this was possible, Admiral explained that human military training includes extensive education in multiple scientific disciplines. Every soldier understands physics, chemistry, biology, and engineering well enough to improvise solutions using whatever materials are available. The scope of human education was staggering. Most galactic civilizations specialized, with individuals focusing on narrow areas of expertise. The idea of every soldier being a multidisciplinary scientist was almost incomprehensible. But even that wasn't the worst revelation. Admiral told us that the 2 soldiers we had observed were considered average performers by human military standards. They weren't special forces operatives or elite commandos. They were regular infantry soldiers, representatives of millions of similar individuals. Admiral N's crystalline form had dimmed to barely visible levels. Millions. According to Admiral, Terra maintains a standing military force of over 200 million personnel, all trained to the standards we had witnessed. And that's just their regular military. They also maintain irregular forces, civilian militias, and what they call academic combat units, university students who study warfare as a theoretical discipline. The numbers were beyond anything the Galactic Federation had ever contemplated. Most civilizations maintained military forces numbering in the thousands, or, at most, tens of thousands. Admiral showed us population statistics for the human. Over 8 billion individuals, with mandatory military service for all citizens. Every human, regardless of their civilian profession, spends at least 2 years learning to analyze and exploit systemic vulnerabilities. His exoskeleton had turned completely black, the color of absolute terror in his species. She told us that humans view warfare not as a separate discipline, but as an extension of problem-solving skills that they use in every aspect of their civilization. Their engineers approach construction projects the same way their soldiers approach enemy vessels, by identifying how things can be made to fail, and then designing solutions that exploit those failure modes. The philosophical implications were staggering. Humans had apparently evolved a culture based on systematic analysis of weakness and failure, turning this approach into a fundamental aspect of their thinking. But the demonstration wasn't over. Admiral asked us one final question. What would we do if we encountered a threat that our analysis couldn't solve? Admiral N spoke the words as if they tasted like poison. What did you tell her? We said we would call for reinforcements, escalate to higher authority, or retreat and develop new technologies. Standard military doctrine for any civilized species. His breathing became labored as he approached the climax of his testimony. Admiral smiled that terrifying human smile and said those were exactly the wrong answers. She told us that when humans encounter a problem they can't solve individually, they don't escalate or retreat. They collaborate. The word hung in the air like a curse. She showed us recordings of human military exercises where entire divisions work together to solve tactical problems. Not following orders from a central command, but actually thinking collectively, sharing ideas in real time, building on each other's insights. The concept was alien to most galactic species, who typically followed hierarchical command structures with clear chains of authority. According to Admiral, human military units function as distributed intelligence networks. Every soldier contributes analytical capability to the collective problem-solving process. When they encounter something beyond individual understanding, they don't panic or retreat, they get smarter. Activated a final memory fragment showing the interior of a human command center. Dozens of personnel worked at stations connected by flowing streams of data, their activities coordinated but not controlled by any central authority. She told us that human military doctrine includes protocols for rapidly scaling intellectual capability to match any threat. If one soldier can't solve a problem, they connect with 10 soldiers. If 10 can't solve it, they connect with 100. If necessary, they can tap into the intellectual resources of their entire civilization. The implications were mind-numbing. A species that could dynamically adjust its collective intelligence level to match any challenge was beyond any threat the galaxy had ever contemplated. Admiral's final words to us were the most terrifying of all, continued, his voice barely a whisper. She said that everything we had witnessed, the infiltration, the weapon modifications, the systematic vulnerability analysis, the collaborative problem-solving, represented what humans considered basic defensive capabilities. Admiral N made a sound like wind through broken crystal. She told us that Earth's defensive preparations were just one small part of a larger human project. While we had been exploring and conquering primitive worlds, humans had been preparing for something they called the big problems. His forearms trembled as he accessed the final fragments of his traumatic memories. When we asked what she meant by big problems, Admiral showed us a star chart covering the entire local galactic cluster. Red markers indicated what humans had identified as existential threats to intelligent life, not just human life, but all intelligent life. The holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of local space, dotted with ominous red indicators. According to human intelligence, there are entities operating in the galactic core region that make our Federation look like a collection of primitive tribes. Ancient machine intelligences, energy-based life forms, entities that exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The scope of human awareness was staggering. While the Galactic Federation focused on local politics and territorial expansion, humans were apparently monitoring threats on a cosmic scale. Admiral told us that human defensive preparations weren't designed to protect Earth from species like us. They were designed to protect all intelligent life in this region of the galaxy from threats that would make the Al Dominion irrelevant. His voice cracked completely as he delivered the final revelation. She said that humans had been watching the Federation's expansion with concern, not because they feared conquest, but because they worried our activities might attract the attention of things that could exterminate all life in this galactic arm. The chamber fell into a silence so complete that the only sound was the soft humming of the neural recording device, faithfully capturing every nuance of cosmic horror that was experiencing. Admiral's parting gift was a data packet containing human observations of these galactic-level threats, along with preliminary defensive strategies they had developed. She said humans were willing to share their knowledge and technology, but only with civilizations mature enough to understand the stakes. Admiral N finally found his voice, and what did she consider the measure of that maturity? Looked directly at the crystalline Admiral, his compound eyes reflecting depths of terror that would haunt the chamber for generations. The ability to work together against a common threat, instead of fighting each other over resources that won't matter if everyone dies. The weight of that statement settled over the assembled representatives like a funeral shroud, and Commander prepared to reveal the final horror that had broken his mind and shattered his faith in everything he had once believed about the universe. The neural recording device's hum grew more intense as it struggled to process the overwhelming cascade of traumatic memories flowing from Commander's consciousness. Around the chamber, representatives from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence, their various forms rigid with horror at what they had already heard. Admiral N's crystalline structure barely glowed now, dimmed by the weight of revelations that challenged everything the Galactic Federation believed about their place in the universe. "Commander," the Admiral's voice carried the fragility of glass under pressure, "you mentioned that Admiral provided information about galactic-level threats. What exactly did those data packets contain?" His forearms clutched at his torso more tightly, his exoskeleton now completely black with terror-induced stress patterns. His compound eyes reflected the memory of horrors that had shattered his sanity. The data packet contained over 3 million files, Admiral, observational records spanning 2 centuries of human deep space monitoring. What they showed us. He paused, struggling to find words for concepts that existed beyond normal comprehension. They showed us that our galaxy is not the peaceful expanse of habitable worlds we believed it to be. The holographic display activated, showing what appeared to be a normal stellar cartographic chart. But as manipulated the controls, hidden layers of data became visible. This is the Orion Arm as we know it, 37 inhabited star systems, 14 space-faring civilizations, countless worlds ready for colonization. But this, the display shifted, revealing a nightmare landscape of cosmic horror, is what humans have been observing for the past 2 centuries. The peaceful star chart transformed into something that made several representatives recoil in instinctive terror. Dark tendrils of something that wasn't quite energy and wasn't quite matter stretched between star systems like a vast web. Pulsing nodes of malevolent intelligence marked locations that the Federation had dismissed as empty space. According to human observations, our entire local stellar region is infested with what they call Category 5 entities, intelligences so alien and powerful that they exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. These entities have been slowly infiltrating our reality for. A Aran representative, her tentacles writhing with anxiety, spoke up. "But our deep space sensors would have detected any large-scale anomalies. We've been monitoring local space for centuries." His laugh was the sound of madness barely held in check. "That's exactly what Admiral said we would think." She explained that human sensor technology operates on principles completely different from ours. While we look for energy signatures and mass concentrations, humans look for patterns, statistical anomalies in quantum fluctuations, irregularities in the cosmic background radiation, distortions in what they call causal flow. The display zoomed in on one of the pulsing nodes, revealing a structure that hurt to look at directly. It seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once, its geometry following rules that violated basic mathematical principles. "This particular entity has been slowly consuming the star system we call Rigel 7. Our surveys show a normal G-class star with a standard planetary formation. Human observations reveal that the star is actually a three-dimensional projection of something that exists primarily in what they call space. Admiral N's voice was barely a whisper. What happened to the real star? Consumed 15,000 years ago, according to human calculations. The entity has been maintaining a perfect illusion while it slowly digests the stellar material and converts it into computational substrate for its own consciousness. The horror of it was beyond comprehension. An entire star system, devoured by an intelligence so vast and alien that it could maintain a perfect illusion of normalcy while feeding. But that's just one entity, Admiral. Human data indicates the presence of over 400 similar intelligences operating throughout our local galactic region. Some are actively consuming matter and energy, others are engaged in activities that humans can't even begin to understand. Manipulated the display again, showing the full scope of human observations. The galaxy appeared riddled with infection points, vast networks of alien intelligence that had been growing in secret for millions of years. Admiral told us that humans discovered these entities by accident during their early experiments with faster-than-light communication. When they tried to send signals through hyperspace, something answered back. The implications sent chills through every representative in the chamber. First contact with cosmic horror, initiated by humanity's own technological advancement. The entities were curious about humans. Apparently, our species was the first in this galactic region to develop FTL communication methods that operate on frequencies these beings could perceive. For the first time they had found intelligent life they could actually communicate with. Admiral N made a sound like crystal grinding against crystal. And what did these entities want from humanity? His breathing apparatus wheezed as he accessed the most traumatic memories of all. Partnership, he whispered. The entities offered to share their technology and knowledge in exchange for human assistance with what they called the Cultivation Project. The word cultivation hung in the air like a death sentence. According to Admiral, these entities have been carefully managing the development of intelligent life throughout the galaxy for millions of years. Every civilization that achieves space flight, every technological advancement, every cultural development, it's all been guided and shaped by these cosmic intelligences. The scope of the conspiracy was beyond imagination. The entire history of galactic civilization had been nothing more than a carefully orchestrated experiment. The Galactic Federation itself is apparently one of their more successful projects. They've been subtly influencing our expansion patterns, our technological development, even our political structures. Everything we think we've accomplished through our own intelligence and determination has actually been part of their grand design. Several representatives began making distressed sounds as the full implications became clear. Their entire civilization was nothing more than a controlled experiment. But the humans refused the entity's offer of partnership, continued, his voice carrying a mixture of terror and admiration. Admiral showed us recordings of those early communications. When the entities explained the cultivation project and offered humanity a place in their cosmic hierarchy, the human response was immediate and unanimous. He activated another memory fragment showing Admiral's briefing room. The human leader stood before a communication console displaying text in symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when viewed directly. The human message was simple. Thank you for the offer, but we prefer to develop on our own terms. Please leave our species alone. The audacity was breathtaking. Humanity had rejected partnership with beings that could manipulate reality on a galactic scale. The entity's response was displeasure. They informed humanity that rejection of the cultivation project was not an acceptable option. Species that refused to participate were typically reclassified as failed experiments and eliminated. Admiral N's glow flickered weakly. How did humans respond to that threat? His exoskeleton actually began to shed stress-molted plates as he relived the memory. Admiral played us the audio recording of humanity's second message to the entities. A single human word transmitted on all frequencies simultaneously. No. The simplicity of it was terrifying in its implications. Faced with cosmic intelligences that could erase civilizations, humanity had simply refused to comply. What followed was what Admiral called the First Human Entity War. It lasted approximately 47 minutes and resulted in the complete destruction of 3 Category 5 entities and the forced withdrawal of 7 others. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The idea that any physical civilization could engage cosmic beings in actual warfare was beyond belief. How? Admiral N asked, his voice barely functioning. Admiral explained that humans had spent the 3 months between first contact and the entity's ultimatum, developing what they called asymmetric reality warfare techniques. While the entities existed primarily in higher dimensional space, they still needed to interact with normal reality to affect our physical universe. Activated a final series of memory fragments showing human military installations unlike anything in the known galaxy. The structures seemed to bend space around themselves, creating impossible geometries that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Humans had figured out how to attack the entity's dimensional anchor points, the areas where they touched normal space. Using principles borrowed from their own theoretical physics, they developed weapons that could sever the connection between higher dimensional consciousness and three-dimensional reality. The technical achievement was staggering. Humans had essentially weaponized advanced mathematics to fight beings that existed beyond normal physical limitations. The war ended when humans demonstrated their ability to not just defeat individual entities, but to permanently damage the dimensional infrastructure that allowed them to manifest in our reality. Faced with the possibility of being cut off from their food sources, the surviving entities agreed to negotiate. Admiral N struggled to process what he was hearing. Negotiate with beings that could manipulate galactic civilization. The treaty, according to Admiral, was simple. The entities agreed to cease all cultivation activities in this galactic region in exchange for humanity's promise not to develop weapons capable of targeting their dimensional infrastructure throughout the rest of the galaxy. The scope of human capability was beyond comprehension. They had not only defeated cosmic horrors, but had negotiated territorial agreements with them. But the entities warned humans about something else, something that made Admiral's expression turn grim even as she told us about their victory. His voice dropped to barely audible levels. The cultivation project wasn't just about managing intelligent life for the entity's own purposes. It was preparation for something they called the convergence event, a cosmic phenomenon that occurs approximately every 50 million years and requires coordinated action by all intelligent life in the galaxy to survive. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. The cultivation project had been preparation for a galaxy-wide survival event. According to the entities, the next convergence event is projected to occur within the next 5,000 years. Without proper preparation and coordination, all intelligent life in the galaxy will be exterminated. Admiral N's crystalline form was now almost completely transparent. And what is this convergence event? Admiral showed us the entity's records of previous convergences. Every 50 million years, our galaxy passes through a region of space that exists at the intersection of multiple realities. During these passages, the fundamental laws of physics become unstable, and beings from other realities begin manifesting in our universe. The holographic display showed images that comprehension, vast structures that existed in impossible geometries, beings of pure energy that consumed matter and converted it to something that wasn't quite energy and wasn't quite thought. The entities explained that survival of a convergence event requires the combined technological and intellectual resources of all intelligent life in the galaxy, coordinated through their cultivation project. Without that coordination, chaotic manifestations from other realities will consume everything. His forearms trembled as he delivered the final revelation. Admiral told us that humans had approximately 3,000 years to prepare for the convergence event without the entity's assistance. She said human scientists were confident they could develop the necessary technologies and strategies, but only if they had access to the combined intellectual resources of all galactic civilizations. The weight of cosmic responsibility settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. She offered the Galactic Federation a choice: continue our current expansion and territorial conflicts while ignoring the approaching convergence event, or join humanity in developing preparations that might actually save everyone. Admiral N found his voice one last time. And what did you tell her? Looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, beings from dozens of worlds, each focused on their own species' interests and territorial ambitions. I told her I would deliver her message to the Federation leadership and hoped they were wise enough to understand what she was offering. He paused, his compound eyes reflecting the weight of absolute terror, mixed with a thin hope that rational beings might choose survival over pride. Admiral smiled that terrifying human smile one last time and said she hoped so too, because the alternative would require humans to develop more aggressive methods of ensuring galactic cooperation. The neural recording device captured every nuance of that final threat, the possibility that humanity might be forced to conquer the galaxy in order to save it. She told us that humans prefer cooperation and voluntary coordination, but they've learned from their experience with the entities that sometimes survival requires making hard choices that other species might not understand. His voice carried the weight of absolute finality. The data packet she gave us contains not just information about the convergence event and the cosmic entities, but detailed plans for technologies that could save all intelligent life in the galaxy. Fusion of matter and energy that could provide unlimited resources, dimensional manipulation techniques that could protect entire star systems, collective intelligence protocols that could coordinate the activities of trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. He looked directly at Admiral N, but she made it clear that humans would only share these technologies with civilizations mature enough to use them responsibly. The measure of that maturity, according to Admiral, is simple: the ability to work together for mutual survival instead of fighting each other for temporary advantage. The silence in the chamber stretched for long minutes as representatives absorbed the full scope of what they had heard. Commander, broken veteran of humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, had delivered a message that would reshape everything the galaxy believed about intelligence, power, and survival in a universe far more dangerous and complex than anyone had ever imagined. The choice now lay before the Galactic Federation: evolve beyond their current limitations and join humanity in preparing for cosmic threats beyond imagination, or continue their petty territorial conflicts while the universe prepared to test whether intelligent life deserved to survive at all. In the end, the most terrifying thing about humans wasn't their military capability or their technological innovation. It was their absolute certainty that they could handle any challenge the universe might present, and their willingness to ensure that everyone else could handle it too, whether they wanted to or not. The neural recorder faithfully captured every detail as the chamber fell into stunned silence, each representative contemplating a future where humanity's terrifying competence might be the only thing standing between their civilizations and extinction on a cosmic scale.